Hey guys, it's Lorkander with Spirit of Twilight. Today I want to talk about the type of wires that I use in my YouTube videos and also talk about their sizes, the benefits of the wire that you can use as well if you're going to make your own jewelry or if you're just looking to find information about the wires that I use before you make a purchase on my website. Now, let's jump right into that, starting with raw copper. Now, raw copper is my favorite type of wire to use. It does tarnish over time because there is not an overlay of an anti-tarnish clear coating. Many people like the look of the aging copper wire or patina that comes through over time. And some people actually prefer to keep their copper wire looking fresh and new. So it really does depend on personal preference. You can also age the copper wire if you want to through a technique that you can buy or a solution that you can purchase, which I personally don't do here. I leave that up to the client in order to make that decision based on what they want to do. Moving along to 0.925 sterling silver. Now, 925 sterling silver is the most popular type of sterling silver, but you also have to keep in mind that it is mixed with a small amount of copper wire. And the reason for that is flexibility. Now, the sterling silver that I use, it is the most sought out type of wire because I use both round and square for my videos, as you may have noticed. You can order the sterling silver wire as half hard or dead soft. The difference between the two is the dead soft is more pliable and half hard is more stable. So if you're using something as far as the skeleton or the base wire, as I call it in my videos, then you want to use something that's a little harder, but you don't have to. You could use dead soft for everything, which pretty much is what I do. But I personally prefer the dead soft consistency when I work with it. It's just so much easier to work with, and in case I'm doing a very intricate design, it will work with me instead of me working against the wire or the wire working against me when I'm making my creations. The only downside to sterling silver is that unfortunately it can be quite expensive, and most people will buy the sterling silver because of its popularity and also the fact that it will patina over time as well because there's no clear coat finish on top of it. But that being said, some people do prefer the copper wire or raw copper wire over sterling silver and vice versa. I also look at the type of stone that I'm using or the color of the stone in order to determine which wire works best for me. Now, the last type of wire that I want to talk about is what's called a colored anti-tarnish wire. And this is the most common and least expensive option when you're making jewelry or using wire to make any other type of products, or if you're doing an art project or what have you. Some of these color-coded wires are not so great in my eyes. Some of them have a tin core, which I don't like because tin will rust over time. I actually prefer to go with a copper core colored wire, and that can be very beneficial because it does not corrode like tin would. So keep that in mind when you're looking for a color. The finish, the anti-tarnish finish on the company that I use is very durable. It repels against acidic type of skin, so you know that clear coat is going to last a long time. And the anti-tarnish coating, or the clear coating on top of the coloring, because this is the plated wire, it will start to degrade over time. So what's going to happen is that first layer is going to start to wear off, and then you're going to have the color underneath, which is plated on top of the copper wire, but eventually that color may tarnish off or may wear off as well, where you're just going to have the bare copper wire showing. And unfortunately, what may happen at that time is you'll have the patina finish or effect come into play with the wire copper wire that's underneath the other two layers. It's not a bad thing. I mean, this, again, is the most affordable option, and I always recommend it to people starting out to use this type of wire because it is very cost effective. It's also very easy to find. You can get it at Michael's, you can get it at Joann's, you can get it at most other craft stores, and you can also get it on Amazon, believe it or not. But you have to keep in mind that you're using a layer wire with a finish on it that may not last for a long time. But again, as I mentioned before, the company that I use, they're very reputable, and fortunately, I have not had any issues with any clients advising me of any issues that they had with their jewelry. So moving right along, let's go into gauges or sizes of the wire. Now, certain sizes of the wire are used for different things, or making different elements based on the art that you're working with or jewelry that you're working with. Now, I use as a base wire or the skeleton wire, as I previously mentioned here. The gauges I use are 16, 18, and 20. Now, this also depends on if the wire is dead soft or if it's half hard. If you're using something such as a 20 gauge wire or even a 22 gauge wire, you're going to want to get something that would be half hard, because the wire, as the gauges get larger in number, the size of the wire decreases. So 16 you could use a half hard, 18 I use a half hard, 18 is the most common one that I use. But when you get into 20 and 22, you may want to consider getting a half hard type of wire instead of dead soft. Now, you can also use a thinner wire, which is for the wrapping techniques around your skeletal wire or your base wire. And most of the ones that I use come in gauge of 22, 24, 26, 28, and 30. Now, 30, when you're talking about a very thin wire, you're talking about a thread, literally. It's almost a thread in consistency and thickness. So you want to be aware of that when you're first starting out. The thinner the wire, the harder it is to keep it straight and not get kinks in the wire where you're going to have to cut it and start work from you left off in your actual weaving. So keep that in mind. If you use a little bit of a thicker wire to start off with, you're probably going to benefit from that a lot more than you would a very thin wire like 28 or 30 gauge. So I use a lot of very thin wire like my 30 gauge if I am bringing two types of weaves together to make a larger pendant or to make something that is more intricate. If I'm adding elements or if I'm securing wire to the back or securing a stone like my Herkimer diamond that I have in a copper setting, and that is used with an 18 gauge wire, and then I believe it's 24 or 26 that I used to wrap it, but then to secure the stone, because I didn't want the wire to show as much with the stone, because the stone is very expensive, is to use the 30 gauge wire. The same thing goes for if you're using any other types of expensive stones or crystals in your wrap or in your weave. And technically, I have stones that I use that cost upward of $30 or more, such as the Libyan desert sandstone. That can be very expensive, and I have one available on my website and I have two on standby. Or another stone like Moldavite, which is very popular, or even the Columbianite, which is another type of Moldavite and obsidian combination glass stone, which looks a lot like Moldavite in texture but has a gray color. So when you're thinking about using the wires, you want to match it with your stone. Do you want to pull the effect away from the stone, or do you want to pull the weave, the design away from the stone? If your stone is larger, that's okay. If your stone is smaller, like the peridot that I had on my website, which was already purchased, that was a larger peridot, believe it or not, but it was also very small to work with, so I wanted to use a smaller wire and a smaller weave, so I didn't take away from the stone in general. So that's another thing you want to consider when you're picking out your wires. But that's it for today. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, shoot me an email, send me a message on YouTube. You can send me a message on Twitter. I'm always on Twitter, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. You can also send me an email or go to my contact page on spiritoftwilight.com, which also you can purchase any of the pendants or jewelry that I do make on spiritoftwilight.com. And if you use the code thank you for joining me today, you'll get 20% off your purchase, and that includes any sale items as well. So as always, thank you so much for joining me. Please do follow me on social media and check out these other videos that I do have available, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.